I was about 12 years old, so my background is prairie farm.
You went to college where?
Iowa State.
And
Iowa.
engineering degree?
Mechanical engineering, yes.
And your first job?
My first job was
Oliver?
Oliver.
That's what I thought. What year was that?
I thought you was going to say it.
No, I want you to say it.
Pardon?
No, I wanted you to say it, but go ahead. When did you start there?
I started there in 1960 when I graduated from college.
And you left in what year?
Left in 72 and came to Missouri and worked for Dan User Machine Company. Worked for them until 2000. And then since then I've been mowing the yard and trying to make that a job.
So, what were some highlight projects you worked on at all?
Well, you know, there was, back in those days, when we made the drawings, we used Phoenix cloth. And I've mentioned that to some people and they know what I'm talking about. Other people don't have any idea. But it's a real smooth cloth that you make drawings on in the old days before computers. And you use mechanical pencils with 2H and 4H hardness lead, and you draw on this Phoenix cloth, and it comes in 3-foot wide roll. And the tables that we had, if you made a big drawing, it was 6 foot long. And one of my first projects was the rear main gear case for the X56 tractor, which later went into production as the 1600. So see, I'm going back a ways, but that's some of the history.
Any other significant projects besides the 2255? And I'll come back and we'll talk about that.
The little projects on several of the different areas, but after a few years I was specialized and responsible for the design of coordinating the design of all the drawbars and 3-point hitches for all of the tractors.
You kind of became a 3-point hitch expert.
Yeah. Okay. Hitch deal.
Yeah. Then the 2255 project, and I'll give a little background on that, and that's the 55 series Olivers. When it first came out, the top two tractors were not the 2050 and 2150 moved up to the 55 series level, but it was the Moline G1050 and G1350 rebadged. Then in 1971, they closed the Minneapolis Moline factory, so there was no tractor above the 1955 at that point in time. In the market, it was moving to 130 or something like that, I think. So they needed something quickly. So, and John was the guy to head that project, and he was kind of the project engineer on it. Now, one question that's often asked, John, is why the Cat engine? Were you involved in that selection at all?
Somewhat. We were looking for more power, and we were looking for something that was reputable from the standpoint of durability and so forth compared to the Oliver engines. And the Caterpillar engine, some of you probably say, well, that was more durable than the Oliver engines. Well, I wouldn't argue with you about that either. But the Caterpillar engine was very well recognized in the field. You didn't have to tell somebody what a Caterpillar engine was. And so it really helped us to develop and to sell the tractor. One of the questions that I'm often asked is, how come you had to have a surge tank on the tractor? Well, to answer the question, because Caterpillar insisted on it. The surge tank is a small extra tank in the cooling system, in the top part of the cooling system. You have the radiator, and you have the surge tank, and then, of course, going through the engine. The surge was required because, according to Caterpillar, when you had load changes or severe weather changes, things like that, it was good to have backup source of coolant to go into the engine so that you don't have any air pockets at all in the main part of the engine. And so the surge tank one of the first things we asked them when we started putting the Caterpillar engine in was, you know, we don't have surge tanks on our engines, and we wasn't going to really put one on there. And they said, well, then you're not going to put the Caterpillar engine in there. So, you know, it was not an option for them. The warranty on the engine was based on having a surge tank to avoid any possibility of air pockets in the hot part of the engine. And so that was one of the things about it. The Caterpillar engine fit well into the chassis of the tractor, and we made a brand new front frame, of course, and so it turned out to be a real nice project. And of course, the Caterpillar engine is, as I mentioned before, is well recognized. And any of you that have Caterpillar engines, or your neighbors have got them and so forth, or Caterpillar tractors, I mean, you know what those engines really do a good job.
One last question, John, changing the subject a little bit, but in your 12 years with Oliver, is there any one person that really stood out to you, or, you know, you really looked up to?
Well, Herb Morrell was the one that was chief engineer, and I really had a lot of respect for Herb. Ron Romaine was assistant chief engineer, and I really liked Ron. We and I got along real well. But there was one gentleman in the department that I usually don't talk too much about unless I get a chance. He was in charge of the drafting department. Harrison Lampkin was very, very crippled. He could barely walk, and his hands looked like that all the time. And when he held a pencil, he'd put the pencil up against the side of the desk and push it in between his fingers to hold it. Harrison was very, very specific. Your letters had to be 7/64 of an inch tall, unless it was a capital letter, which in those drawings there wasn't small letters and capital letters. There was regular size and the big letters. So you had the two sizes, and everything was capital letters. But Harrison, when he walked, he had both hands like this, and he'd swing one foot forward, and then he'd swing the other foot forward. And he had paralysis as a young child, and that's what he ended up with. But he knew the drafting department. He knew everything. And if you didn't draw it the way Harrison said for you to draw it, you got to draw it over.
What you're talking about is part of what creates quality in a tractor, discipline like that. And so what was his title?
He was head of the drafting department.
Okay. Well, John is going to be here, you know, after the banquet. Also, you're going to be out at the show tomorrow.
Yes.
So you have a chance to talk to him. But I just think it's just wonderful that we have him here and you all get exposed to John. So thanks, John.
I'm pleased to have a whole bunch of my family here tonight. So
How many do you have?
I think there's 10 of us all together.
Wow. Thank you.